Hello and welcome to EWTN Live, a program where we bring you guests from around the world. And tonight, we will speak with an award-winning journalist and a very widely published photographer who were granted complete access to the most important archives in the world, namely the Vatican Secret Archives, now known as the Apostolic Archives. And we'll talk about what they discovered. But first, we want to talk briefly with EWTN Radio's general manager, Jack Williams, about what you can discover through EWTN Radio. Jack, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on, Father Mitch, and I think every once in a while I like to just kind of take a step back and just make sure that people even know what we offer on EWTN Radio. Besides Father Mitch every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. But Monday through Friday from, roughly 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening, we're completely live and interactive, taking phone calls from our listeners on various topics. You know, we have, counseling shows, we have apologetics shows, we have evangelization shows, and a full lineup Monday through Friday, and then a completely different lineup on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, for people to take advantage of. Now, we're on the cusp of Advent as we sit here today, and we'll have a full lineup of Advent specials and things that we'll be running that will lead up to our 48 hours of Christmas. So we'll have special programming all day long on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. We've done that for the last couple years. It's been extremely popular. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that it was out there, that it was available to them. And if they want to check out those schedules or where they can listen, whether it's on one of our 360 plus AM, FM stations around the country or on the EWTN app at EWTN.com, on TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Sirius XM Channel 130. They can find all the details and everything they'd want to know about EWTN Radio at EWTN.com/radio.
Great. Thank you. It's good to have that update. Jack, of course, is at the same show I'm in because they need a big guy to run herd on me. So, thank you. Appreciate it very much. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with tonight's guests. So please stay with us. Welcome back. We have some great guests tonight, longtime friends, and they have become together a wonderful journalistic and illustrative duo through their insightful investigations into things and people we hold dear as Catholics. The relics of the Passion of Christ, the mysteries of Fatima, of Our Lady Guadalupe, and Saint Faustina Kowalska. And now, this same world-renowned photographer and award-winning journalist have released their newest project exploring church history and much wider, broader human history as well. Joining us now from Warsaw, Poland. I told you we get you guests from around the world. From Warsaw, Poland, please welcome the authors of the new book, Vatican Secret Archives, Unknown Pages of Church History. We welcome Grzegorz Gorny and Janusz Rosikon. Grzegorz and Janusz, how are you?
Thank you, fine. And you?
There you are. Good.
Thank you.
Good, we can see you now. And it's good to have you back. Unfortunately, you're still in Poland and not here with us in studio. But I had to say, and I mentioned to you earlier, that I was very envious of you going to the Vatican Archives. I had tried to do so, didn't work out while I was in Rome, but hope to do so someday after the pandemic is all taken care of. But you got to go into the secret archives. And first of all, what is the reason they call these secret archives?
I wrote this book because the Vatican Secret Archives are the most important archives in the world. In this place, there are many documents, files, and reports about many secrets from the history of the Catholic Church. These stories are emotional, controversial, and alive today. You know, there are many myths, black legends, and fake news about the history of the Catholic Church in the pop culture, in the media, in the movies, in the books. For example, the name of the rose, the Da Vinci Code, and many false interpretations of the history are used against the Church. And this is the big problem, because this problem is devoted to the spiritual legitimacy and credibility of the Church. And we wanted to looking for the truth, the historic truth. And we decided to access to the Vatican Secret Archives, because the Vatican Secret Archives are huge sources of informations. Documents in this place shows what's really happened. And we didn't have any problems to gain access to the Vatican Secret Archives. All doors were open for us. Why? Because the prefect of the Vatican Secret Archives, Monsignor Sergio Pagano, said the church is transparent, and the church needs historic truth. This is very important for the church. And Monsignor Pagano also knew our previous books, and he trusted us. This was a great privilege for us.
The private means in Italian language, the secret means in Italian language private. So the Vatican Secret Archive were a private archive of the popes. So the secret is not secret like in English or similar Polish languages. And our visit to the Vatican Secret Archives was a great adventure for us, and also a great experience for us. Generally, those archives are close to journalists, but like Grzegorz said, thanks to our previous books like Witnesses to Mystery, which has been translated into 9 languages, the last language was Netherlands language, Monsignor Pagano gave us permission to take photographs. Usually historians and scientists can only go into the reading room where they wait for copies of documents to be brought to them. We were the second team ever to be given full access to the archives.
When the access had been given to another publisher, the problem was they tried to make it sensational about the secrets, whereas the church had made it known to them and to anybody else that these are simply well preserved. These are very ancient documents, so they're careful to keep them, but it's not secret in the modern sense of being hidden, but it's secret in the sense that it's private, but it can be studied. And in fact, back in the 1800s, Ludwig Pastor, an historian, was allowed complete access to all the records, and he wrote a fantastic history of the papacy using these documents as primary sources. So this is something that the church has preserved for posterity so that it doesn't get ransacked and misused and such.
All institutions must have their own archives. Even families have their own archives. All the more the Catholic Church, which has 1,200,000,000 members. It's believed that the papal archives are 2,000 years old. The first Pope, St. Peter, had his own archive. And the first papal archivist was St. Mark, secretary, translator, and guide of St. Peter. And the first papal archive was in the travel bag of St. Mark. And over the centuries, the archive grew, and today it's not a small travel bag, but a huge building. And during the first, second, and third centuries, the church was persecuted, and the archive had to be hidden. In that time, the most famous archivist was Saint Lawrence, who was the treasurer of the church too. He was imprisoned by the Roman soldiers and grilled alive because he didn't want to give the archives and treasures to Emperor Valerian. And there were some cases when the archivist destroyed the archives because they were afraid they would expose Christians. And new era of the papal archive started when the church gained religious freedom and left the underground. Emperor Constantine the Great gave Pope Sylvester I the Lateran Palace in which the papal archives were located. In this place, the archives lay for 1,000 years. The oldest document we can find in the archives today is from the 8th century. This is the collection of the blank forms from the Apostolic Chancery. Why aren't there any older documents? Because firstly, Rome was attacked by barbarians many times, and they destroyed and burned the archives. And secondly, the documents were written on papyrus. It was a material which easily turned into dust. The church tried to save documents by transporting them to a safe place, for example, to the monastery on the mountain, Monte Cassino. Later, such place was the Tower of the Paper, the very high tower in Rome. And the most valuable documents were located under Santa Scala, the Holy Stairs. These stairs are believed to be brought from Jerusalem to Rome by Saint Helena, the mother of the Emperor Constantine the Great. And between 11th and 14th century, the popes traveled around Italy and France, and they took the archives with them. For example, to Lyon, Viterbo, Agnani, and many other places in France and Italy. And a new chapter in this history was the Babylon captivity of the papacy in Avignon.
Yeah, but going back to the Vatican Secret Archives, the same entrance to these archives was very interesting for me as a photographer. From the Belvedere courtyard, we passed through the gate with 6 bronze bas-reliefs showing the towns where archives were transferred during their long history. Of course, we visited all of these places to take a photo and to do some research. And one detail of this gate is on the cover of our book, this one. Later, we went to the large main hall, an underground bunker beneath by Vatican Museum, which contains practically all of the Vatican Secret Archives documents. There are many shelves which end-to-end are 53 miles long. The giant reinforced concrete bunker was finished in 1982. It's a perfectly organized and taking picture there was fascinating. But in one moment that was very interesting for us because we jumped back to the medieval times, a few levels up in the Vatican Astronomic Observatory, also a part of Vatican Secret Archive. We saw the beautiful Tower of the Wind. In this place, in 1582, 10 days vanished from the history of our civilization, October 5th to 14th. Why? They were removed due to replace of the Julian calendar by the Gregorian calendar. The Julian calendar was not so precise. It lost one day every 128 years. The new one, established by three scientists during and introduced by Pope Gregory XIII, loses only one day every 3,322 years. That was very interesting for us to be in the sundial room where the scientists work there. In this place, there are beautiful frescoes you see in our book. And the new calendar was adopted very quickly by some countries, but generally Protestant countries such as UK waited more than 100 years before they took it on board. And going to Avignon, that was something very interesting for us. We spent several days in Avignon. From 1309 to 1377, the Pope lived out in Rome, but in Avignon in France, because the situation in Rome was complicated. Aristocratic families were fighting for importance. So Pope Clement V, French cardinal before, and 7 popes during so-called Avignon papacy was in Avignon. That was a logical place. And of course the archive lived there too. In Avignon, taking picture in the beautiful Gothic palace of an area of about 172,000 square feet was a real pleasure. And please notice that under the floor in one beautiful room, the floor was made for heavy stone slabs, is a large hiding place. In this place, all documents and relics were kept in locked chest. That was a great surprise for us, a structurally simple treasure for the most important archive and relics.
This is a very important part of our history because, you know, there have been many problem people in the church as well as many, many saints. What is important to note is that the Vatican Archive kept all of this material, that we are the ones who preserved the record of not only the great accomplishments like that of Pope Gregory XIII and the scientists that corrected the calendar. Scientists too, by the way, were Catholic priests, mostly Jesuits. But also they preserve the various scandals in the church. We have those records so that we can deal with the truth of our history. And these archives are extremely important for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to access to many original documents, and the most impressive experience was touching the historic events. For me, it was very emotional to have in my hands the letter written by Polish King Jan Kazimierz to the Pope Alexander VII, and also in the book is a photo of a pardon granted to a priest from Glasgow who walked to Rome in 1441 seeking absolution for accidentally killing someone during the soccer game. Everything is noted in the archives.
And some of documents were coded because they contained secret information. And in Vatican, there was a special papal official, Secretariat of Codes, in which the correspondence was coded and decoded. And we saw the special code used to decipher documents from the Middle Ages.
Another area that is, of course, going to be of interest to modern people and folks like yourselves who came from Eastern Europe would be the archives of Pope Pius XII. And so many of the things that he did to help save Jewish people. He was not only trying to save the Jewish people and oppose the Nazis, but he was involved in all kinds of negotiations with Great Britain to help bring an end to the war, as well as to save hundreds of thousands of Jews. And those records are present at the secret archives, and it goes flat against the lies that were told about him by an East German communist agent who wrote that Pius XII was Hitler's pope and all these kinds of foolish things that have been said. This is something that is a very important part of this history. And what we're going to do is take a short break. We'll come back and we'll continue this conversation about one of the most important historical sources in the world, namely the Vatican Secret Archives, or as Pope Francis has renamed them to avoid some of the confusion of the past decades, that these are the Apostolic Archives. So please stay with us and we'll come back to this discussion. All right, we are back with our guests, Grzegorz Gorny and Janusz Rosikon, and we are going through their book, The Vatican Secret Archives, Unknown Pages of Church History. This book, by the way, is available for you to enjoy and learn a lot from. If you go to EWTNRC.com, EWTNRC.com, it is item 3180, And this is a great volume to have. It's got beautiful photographs. This is a characteristic of the books that both Grzegorz and Janusz have written together over the years. The photography is wonderful, and it teaches you more than 10,000 words, as the old Chinese proverb goes, along with the text. And I've loved it. Some of their books have been very moving for me. Their book on the relics of Christ's Passion and their book on Fatima. Both of those have been just superb. So I recommend all their books. And just so you as an audience understand, because they are in Poland, there is a delay, a satellite delay. So just be patient with us as we adapt to this. So, Grzegorz and Janusz, I would like to continue on. The Vatican Archives show us that at the time of World War II, Pope Pius XII was not a pope favorable to Hitler or the Third Reich, but the records show that he was somebody who saved hundreds of thousands of Jews, and that he also was working with the British, with Great Britain, to help work out a peace program at the end of the war if Hitler could be removed. So there was no way that he was cooperating with the Nazis or was a pope for them, but rather the records show that he was very much working behind the scenes and trying to be as effective as possible as pope, along with the other truths of church history. Would that not be correct?
Pope Pius XII was accused of being passive and indifferent to the Holocaust of Jews. And the first person who accused him was German playwright Rolf Hochhuth in the play The Deputy in 1963 in Berlin. And therefore, Pope Paul VI declassified the files on the Pope Pius XII only 6 years after his death. And normally, the files from the Vatican Secret Archives are declassified 70 years after somebody's death. In 1964, 4 historians entered to the Vatican Secret Archives, and they published a total of 12 volumes of documents on Pope Pius XII. In Vatican, we met Father Peter Gumpel, a German Jesuit who was in the archives and had studied these files and published 6 volumes of documents. And these historians tried to answer the question why Pope Pius XII didn't protest officially against the Holocaust of Jews. But the Pope didn't protest officially against the mass murder of Poles and other nations by German Nazis too. Why? Because even Polish bishops asked the Pope not to protest against the mass murder of Polish people by German Nazis. Why? Because they feared revenge of German Nazis and even greater persecutions. The Polish Archbishop Adam Sapieha from Krakow personally burned the open letter of Pius XII against the Nazi murders in occupied Poland. His fear was justified. Let's look at the Netherlands. In 1942, Dutch bishops protested openly against the German policy towards Jews, and it made Adolf Hitler furious. In consequence, 4,000 Catholics of Jewish descent were deported to the Nazi German death camp Auschwitz and exterminated in the gas chambers. Amongst these Jews was the Carmelite Saint Edita Stein. And this one moral act cost the lives of 4,000 innocent people. One moral act and 4,000 lives. And the Pope knew about it. But the silence of Pope Pius XII didn't mean inactivity. The Pope hated the Nazism. He never met Adolf Hitler. And before the Second World War, he was the ghostwriter of encyclica of the Pius XI against the German Nazism. And the Pope preferred cabinet diplomacy and discreet but systematic help. For example, the Catholic parishes in occupied Europe issued false baptism certificates to Jews. The Jewish children were sheltered in orphanages run by nuns. The church issued false passports and smuggled the people abroad. During the German occupation of Rome, Pius XII himself saved over 8,000 of Roman Jews by hiding them in the Vatican buildings. And amongst these Jews was the chief rabbi of Rome, Israel Zolli. And the Jewish diplomat and historian Pinchas Lapide claims that Pius XII contributed to rescue of over 800,000 Jews. And after the war, many Jewish leaders expressed their gratitude to Pius XII for this help with saving the Jews, including the Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir. And so, why did so many Jews change their minds about Pius XII in the following years? And the answer to this question was given by Romanian general Ion Pacepa, the head of communist secret police, Securitate. He revealed that the KGB organized a secret disinformation operation against Pius XII. Why? Because Pius XII was the public enemy number one of two totalitarian systems, not only Nazism, but also communism, and that the Soviet agents of influence distributed this material in the West. And the black legend of Pius XII was born. And even the Yad Vashem Institute displayed the disgraceful information about Pius XII. Fortunately, it was removed after many protests from historians all over the world. And 1 year ago, the Pope Francis ordered to open archives on Pius XII. And these archives were opened on the 2nd of March this year. But now these archives are closed because they are the pandemia of coronavirus in Rome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those situations that after this COVID pandemic is over, things will get back to normal, God willing. But until then, we have to deal with that crisis. But already the information has been shown about that. And there are lots of other areas where the church, in its own records, shows that the false statements about the church are just that. There is fake news and fake history about the church. For instance, in various claims about the Inquisition, I heard, I didn't hear, I read that the Inquisition killed 6 million And one person even said 9 million women were killed as witches. And this is just absolute false history, nonsense that's put out by sometimes Marxists who want to discredit the church when it just isn't even close to true. I think the number of people that died in the Inquisition was over 600 years, about 4,500 people. Again, I don't want to defend everything that the Inquisition did, but it was not the nonsense that they say it was. And so on with many other issues in the archives.
Yeah, the Inquisition is an extremely popular and distorted subject. In 1998, Pope John Paul II decided to declassify all the Vatican secret archives files, 4,500, pertaining the Inquisition. An international research commission was set up under the leadership Professor Agostino Borromeo from Sapienza Universitat. An 800-page volume, the fruit of 6 years of toil, containing the conclusion of 16 historians from across the world, completely rejected the black legend associated with the famous Spanish Inquisition, but generally speaking, Inquisition. In fact, many arrested wanted to be tried by Inquisition, as only this court provided a defense lawyer and fed the prisoner decently. It's very worth knowing the truth. We've met some documents that somebody asked about beer during being in prison, but unfortunately that was impossible to buy a beer. So they offered him money. Could you organize yourself beer, because we offer only wine. So in the medieval time, this kind of fed in the prison was something unbelievable, because in reign or civil courts, that was impossible. And also in the Inquisition court, that was impossible torture people without medic. So, and only 3 times, only one kind of torture. So the normal court was much worse. And of course, many people burn at stakes, what burned in Switzerland during the Calvin 20 years time in Geneva. They burned over 500 people, more than 5% of population. The same in England, thousands of Catholics were killed, but people tell that all Inquisition were doing. So it's completely false information. So we have to study history and look for this historic through.
Exactly. Let me ask you this. Were you able to learn any other new information during your visit? I know you were doing a brief visit and you were not doing scholarly research as such, but were there any particular things that you saw that you particularly learned from while you were doing your work at the Vatican Secret Archives?
Here we've met Barbara Frale, who found a very important document about Templar leaders. We visited Chinon Castle in the Loire Valley, and that was a challenge for us. I wanted to show ruins from the interesting point of view, and also in Coudray Valley, this castle, the imprisoned Templar leaders carved symbolic graffiti in cell wall. But the history is more complicated because the Pope was not against Templar, tried to protect them, but Philip the Fair needs money. So, and Templars was very rich because they collect money for the next crusade. So, the first he killed or take money from Jewish families in France. The next step that was Templars money, and the next bankers from Lombardia. So the Philip I needs money, and organized the first in history black PR, and he was perfect. And also we found a history of Galileo. You know that 30 students in Europe, that was a special kind of enquete organized by European Union, and 30% of students tell that Galileo was burned at stake. 97% he was tortured. It's not true.
Right.
He died in his apartment. He had the court, not church court, give him 3 years arrest at home. He spent in Villa Medici, the very rich villa of very rich family, and he met many scientists. So it's completely black PR, but it's very difficult now to show the truth. We try to do.
Mm-hmm. This, I think that is one of the most classic examples, because the reality of Galileo and the Galileo Affair is that the church was not against science. In fact, the Pope at the time was himself a professional mathematician. He was not against science, but Galileo did not have sufficient evidence for his theory. And the evidence for his theory that the earth went around the sun came about later, and then the church said, oh, no problem. But we have the evidence. But in Galileo's time, they didn't. And they didn't want him to assert a theory without the evidence. Plus, they didn't like it that he was calling the Pope all kinds of bad names. That didn't go over with any rulers in those days. And that included the Pope. So that's why he got in trouble. He said a lot of nasty things about the Pope in public, and the Pope shut him up.
Yeah, but he met many times with Pope. He met many times with cardinals. So, you know, and many documents, about over 4,000 documents, are in the Vatican Secret Archives. So this history is quite clear. But we have to know what's really happened. But this tragic situation that 97% of students, not for normal people, students of university, knows that Galileo was tortured. Never was tortured. Never.
Exactly.
But how to fight with this kind of informations?
Yep. Well, this is why we depend on journalists like you two.
We wrote about the French Revolution. Yeah, that's. We try to show the real situation, historic situation. Sometimes is not very clear, because we show also the French Revolution. There are not many documents in the Vatican, because Vatican was completely cut off from France during the revolution, but this vision of the revolution we've got now is totally different. That was the first genocide in a history of Europe.
Yep.
And we show in our book.
Yes, the French Revolution had not only a political but a religious dimension. The revolution fought not only with the monarchy and aristocracy, but also with the Catholic Church. And in France, in Vendée, we met Professor Reynald Secher, who wrote many books on the French Revolution and the genocide in Vendée. He told us that Lenin was visiting Vendée to study the methods of terror and genocide. And then in Russia, Lenin said, we must exterminate the Cossacks. They are our Vendée. And the genocide in the Vendée was a model for the Bolsheviks. Mm-hmm. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn spoke about it when he came to Vendée in 1993. Then he opened a mausoleum dedicated to the victims of the genocide in the Vendée. And he compared the French Revolution with the Bolshevik Revolution and said there would be no Bolshevik Revolution without the French Revolution. Mm-hmm. Because both revolutions were inspired by the same utopian idea. We will create a new man, a new society, a new world, and we will change the nature of man. We will build a paradise on earth, but this is a utopia. They promised heaven on earth and created hell on earth.
Yes.
Yeah, like the guillotine was a symbol of God. They pray to guillotine. You know, it's something unbelievable, but that's happened. We noticed this in our book.
Mm-hmm. This is something that you have also done in your other books. One of the things I loved about your book on Our Lady of Fatima is that you made the connections with what was happening in the Bolshevik Revolution that took place right after the apparitions at Fatima. You show the development of the history, and you help us understand the message of Our Lady. Here in this book on the Vatican Secret Archives, you show how the way the Church had dealt with these issues in the past was also important for us to learn from today. The Church has to be true to her own identity, in Jesus Christ, and faithful to her teaching. And as such, the Church brings a much more wise and faithful working in human history. And the only way the world can deal with the Church is to make these lies about her past when in fact she did something very, very important. We have just one more minute. Any last comments in the last minute or so?
Yeah, the goal of our work, our journeys, our meetings with scholars and scientists was to look for the truth. The historic truth. So we decided to access to Vatican Secret Archives because they are a huge source of information, and documents kept in this place show what's really happened. And we wanted to see with our own eyes not only the documents but also those places related to what we described in the book. We wanted to touch things, to feel the atmosphere, to take photographs, to talk to local residents, and look at old family mementos. We wanted to find something not one else had noticed before. We wanted the readers to find themselves in the places we describe. Now we know that history of the Church, with its durability, is full of surprises. And that's we are very happy that we create this book.
Well, thank you very much, and may the Lord bless you and all of our viewers. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's great to be with you and to encourage everyone to read this great book, Vatican Secret Archives, Unknown Pages of History, by our two guests. God bless you all, and thank you.